Angus Reid did a study,
Okay.
and you may be one of these percentages. And March 7th of this year, they discovered that 50% of Canadians don't have a will. Okay,
Sure.
so that would mean 50% of you listening on to this podcast don't have a will. And out of the 50%, 35% of the people who actually have a will
Right.
have it up to date. So, with that, if you don't have a will, maybe it's something to consider.
For sure.
A couple other things you're going to miss if you don't have a will. There's missed tax planning opportunities. It's a lengthy and costly process, as we mentioned in the previous podcast. I think 12 to 18 months before assets can probably be dispensed, and less chance of you deciding who you can distribute your assets to. So, some interesting statistics there. Needless to say, Cecil didn't do any estate planning, right? And hopefully that's not the case for our friends listening.
For sure. Yeah, and I think of those kind of 4 subgroups of things that can go wrong, I don't know, in my opinion, they're all equally as horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, just having that will in place allows you to see your legacy continue on. You're allowed to, direct what happens to your minor children, where your assets go, you can mitigate some taxes. And yeah, you avoid those lengthy delays in having one of your family or friends apply to the court to gain, access to the estate through the administration process. Because a lot of things, like you say, can happen in that interim period between when someone passes and when you might actually finally get that final distribution. So you want to be able to make sure that those steps from point A to that final distribution are as quickly timed out as possible. Adding this application process into the court is just going to put another burden on your family at a point in time where they obviously don't want to be dealing with this. So putting that will in place is going to help them be able to take the time to grieve, as opposed to filing applicable documents with the government to gain access to your funds, your properties, etc., etc.
So a good example as well is if your will was, if you didn't have a will and it was intestate, so they also have to determine who's going to be the executor. So just keep this in mind. Imagine if you had, $200,000 of Apple stock, okay, and you passed away without any will. What's going to happen to that $200,000 of Apple stock? It's going to sit there for however long it takes for the courts to decide who the executor is or the PRs is. Once that PR's finally got permission that they are granted authority to do something, they will then rifle through all the things that need to be dealt with. Hopefully they get over to the Apple stock, and by that time you've got market fluctuation. In 6 months you could have that stock drop. If you had or shares in Target, I'll tell you what, a lot happened over the last 6 months for Target, and if you don't sell it right off the bat, you could look at $100,000 loss within that time. So think about that when you are thinking about, should I get a will now or should I wait until I accumulate assets? So just a little example on that.
Yeah, very good point.